Wow.
Awesome.
Good.
It says live on YouTube.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so I'm doing something else again. So now it's giving me a different screen. And
So it says we're live.
yes,
Yeah.
finally we are. Oh my gosh.
Yay.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Finally. I'm super excited. We are finally live, finally. So I'm sorry, my feel as if my eye is going up and down. I'm looking at multiple screens. I'm looking at you guys on one screen and then also looking at YouTube on the other screen, so I can see comments and everything. So thank you guys for joining. I need more people to please join. I said a few people dropped. I was looking at the numbers before. I need everybody to please join. Say something in the comment section. Let me know that you guys are here. I know that, our communities are opening back up. So some people are running errands. I think one of my friends sent me a message like, I'm in the African store to go and do my shopping. So I'm not going to be able to join you today. I'm going to watch a replay. I'm like, that's totally fine. It will be on YouTube. I know we're back to running to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings, cleaning and everything. So, but it's okay. We're going to have fun nonetheless. I see more people are coming in. So thank you guys for joining. I have the privilege of having this discussion with the most phenomenal women in mental health. Yes, guys, I say that. If you don't like that, that's your own wala, but I authoritatively say so, that these are fantastic women. So I'm gonna do a bit of introduction and then I'm gonna let them also introduce themselves as well. I think the view on YouTube is different from my screen. So to my immediate right, I have Remi Oshifade. Remi Oshifade is a licensed psychotherapist and clinical supervisor. She's gonna tell us a little bit more of herself very shortly. And then right next to Remi, I have Vanessa Adebayo. Vanessa is the founder of Africa's Mental Health Matters. She does a lot of traveling across the African continent, being an advocate for mental health awareness. Wait, I'm already saying what you're supposed to be saying, sorry. Sorry. And then right below that, I have Ms. Jimmy Olawale, who is also a licensed professional clinical counselor and also a life coach. And finally, I have Dr. Ijoma Para, who is a professor of social work at Stony Brook University School of Social Welfare. So thank you so much, ladies. This is a powerhouse right here. I'm so excited to have you guys with me. So really quickly, let's just take a minute or two to just tell people more about what we do. I think that would help people get more familiar with you. So let's start in chronological order. We'll start with Remi rather clockwise. We'll start with Remi.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Sharon, for having us all here today. I think this is a conversation that, it's important to us as clinicians. It's important to the community. So thank you for the opportunity. As you stated, I am a licensed psychotherapist and also clinical supervisor. A lot of my work specializes in trauma work in the community, how it impacts individuals and just the society as a whole. I've also had the opportunity I also work as an adjunct instructor where I work in a correctional setting, just educating on, trauma-informed care, how trauma impacts individuals that we respond to. So a lot of advocating in that sense as well. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Remi. And then we'll move into Vanessa. Vanessa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having us once again. I'm truly excited to be a part of the conversation. I am a global public health professional, but I got into mental health really from a study experience working, having an opportunity to be on ground in Ghana and just realizing the stigma associated to mental health. And so talking about mental health on the African continent as well as in the African diaspora is just very important to me and important to the work that I do. Our initiative, Africa's Mental Health Matters, really focuses on destigmatizing misconceptions about mental illnesses, but then furthermore encouraging young adults and just people in general to acknowledge mental health and be able to seek mental health resources. And so we pair people up with therapists based on their geographical location. We have a lot of advocacy groups and we have a lot of programming that we do. And so just being able to be a part of this conversation, I think is super important, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mrs. Olawale.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Jimmy Olawale. I am a licensed professional clinical counselor. I practice in the state of Ohio. I have my own group practice, and we primarily see people that struggle with anxiety, depression, trauma-related and stress-related issues. I am a life coach as well, and I also am the host of the podcast called Life, Love, and Therapy.
Nice, nice, awesome, great. And finally, Dr. Ijoma.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for, just not only just inviting me to be a part of this panel, but just creating the space for us to talk about issues in the Black community. Just having a panel of just beautiful and accomplished Black women, Nigerian women at that, it's amazing. So thank you for that. So yeah, like she said, I'm Dr. Ijoma Opara. I'm a professor of social work at Stony Brook University in New York. I teach primarily grad students, so master social work students in the family, youth, and a transition to adulthood sequence. So I just teach them practice skills on how to work with youth and families. My research, I overall focus on doing community-based participatory research. So I work directly in the community with Black and Brown people, specifically on reducing substance use and also HIV prevention amongst minority youth. And also highlighting mental health and bringing more attention to mental health and how underlying issues like anxiety and depression can lead to engaging in risky behaviors. And I'm also clinically trained as a child and family therapist.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for taking the time to introduce yourself. So everyone now knows or has a better idea of the ladies that we have put together for this discussion. So our discussion is we're continuing to address issues surrounding, immigrants and, what's been going on since the racial tension started with George Floyd, or resurrected rather. And this has been a series for those of you who have been following. We had discussions earlier with parents and, issues or difficulties they had and experiences they had raising Black sons in America, and same thing with the mothers. And then, now we had to, if those of you who were here, I think last week would have heard one of our callers who, and she was the reason why we decided to have this mental health discussion. She brought to light a part that a lot of us overlook and some of us know about, but just don't pay attention to because it's just in the culture not to pay much attention to mental health. And the moment you start using the word mental, there's a negative connotation attached to that. Like, you're not mentally balanced or, point blank, you are mad, and that's not the case. And, there's a lot of myths, a lot of stigmatization that, is associated with mental health. And we're hoping that with this discussion, we can kind of dispel a lot of that and just kind of shed a little more light on what mental health really is about and how people can seek help or recognize signs that they otherwise would not. And, this is also, I'm sure, well, not sure, but a lot of people also might not even have health insurance and might be afraid to go or not be able to call a doctor and say, here's how I'm feeling. Is this a concern? Should I be saying, a mental health professional? A lot of people don't have health insurance. Some people don't even know that if you have insurance, that these things are covered. You're supposed to speak up when you have this issue. So those are things that I kind of want us to touch base with. So we'll start with your experiences with mental health in the African community. Is it just me, or do you feel that it is not as embraced as we think it should be? Like, I feel like we have that that discrepancy. I don't know if the word is discrepancy right there with the African community, especially, right? So, Dr. Ijoma, what has been your experience when you're discussing mental health with the African or the Black community at large?
Yeah. So there's a slight difference, but not really. But so with the African community, rather, I think that what our fear about mental health and just our, I guess, ignorance with mental health comes from religion too, right? So I think that we rely heavily on religion, on Christianity or Islam or, whatever religion you may ascribe to. And when you have issues pertaining to, anxiety or depression and so forth, and not even be able to put a word on it, the first thing we are told is just to pray about it. Just pray to God about it. If you start hearing voices or if it gets too much, that means that you're possessed by the devil, you need deliverance, or as your ancestors put a curse on you. So because of that, people just don't even feel comfortable, not even necessarily feel comfortable. People don't even know that they're even experiencing something that can actually be easily treatable by just seeking clinical, like clinical guidance, or, going to a therapist, a psychiatrist, or just even talking about our feelings, right? So I think the first step in the African community is being comfortable to even talk about it, right? Because sometimes it's talking about, I'm not feeling good today, or, I experienced trauma, I experienced a loss in my family, I not doing well in school, I'm upset about my boyfriend breaking up with me, or whatever, whatever the issue is, and just being comfortable talking to someone about it, whether it's your friend or family member. I think that's the first step, is just acknowledging that you may have something going on with you, and that's okay. It's normal, right? As human beings, it's normal for us to have feelings. If you didn't have any feelings, then something, then something's wrong with you, right? We should be concerned. We should be concerned if you don't have emotional reaction to trauma, or loss, or heartbreak, or whatever it is. I think the similar overall with the Black community, and I'm including African Americans, Caribbeans, and Afro Latinos, and so forth, is that it's similar, where we're just not taught to talk about our feelings. There's a stigma behind that, right? Even talking about physical health, like even just saying, I need to go to the doctor because my chest is hurting. Even that can be considered in some communities as like a stigma, like, no, don't go to the doctor. And that's really because of the mistrust, of the medical system in general, especially, given the history of just how Black people have been treated by medical doctors and researchers and so forth, right? So I think that we can't, as clinicians, we can't ignore that. We have to, be able to figure out how to spread more awareness, make people comfortable, seeking guidance and seeking counsel and seeking medical, medical help and mental health work. But we need to, also work with them within our families to be able to teach more about the fact that it's normal to seek help, like, like it's okay. Like there's strength in letting people know, like, I'm not myself today, there's strength in asking for help, So I think if we spread that more, and I think we're doing this, I think slowly this generation is starting to understand the importance of that. I think if we continue doing what we're doing, hopefully, that stigma will be removed.
Yeah. If I can piggyback on that with what Dr. Juma said, you made a lot of excellent points. I always like to refer to a particular experience that I had growing up. This is in Nigeria. And I would remember just being in a car, maybe on the way to school, and I would see individuals on the side of the road. Maybe they're talking to themselves, or, someone's yelling that they're crazy, something's going on, just like, Shem, what you referred to. And I remember that stuck to me, just seeing, I think as a child, for me, that was traumatic, just wondering what's going on with the individual. Why are they being ostracized? Why are they being yelled at, or whatever it is that's not supportive of their situation? So I remember, being in high school here in the United States. And at one point, I think I was in a lecture, and I made the connection to those experiences that I had in Nigeria to mental health symptoms, and how this natural diagnosis that's behind this, and even not going as extreme as a severe mental condition, but just understanding that as individuals, we go through things that impact us. And in some cases, it becomes extreme where you need more therapeutic interventions. So growing up, I didn't really hear a lot of people talking about mental health, talking about psychology. I think for me, when that light went off in high school, I remember having a conversation with my dad and just being interested in psychology. And I remember from that point saying that I wanted to pursue that. And I remember he was one of at least the first people for me that encouraged that. However, I didn't hear that around me. No one supported that. So, when you're growing up, people ask, oh, what do you want to do? What do you want to do when you grow up? And I would say mental health, psychology. Like, oh, what's that? But just having that, that sound of reason, at least for me, from my father saying that, yes, why not? Go ahead and do that. That's what you want to do. And as I got older, being in the field and learning from other individuals and being educated on what mental health is, what does it look like? What does it present as? And even understanding that even within us as individuals, we all experience trauma in one shape or form. Even research says that about 50 to 90% of individuals would experience some type of traumatic experience at one point in their life or another. Now, how we respond to it is really, it's really subjective, right? So one of the things that I feel like it's important is to have that dialogue to say that it's normal for you to feel this way based on your own interpretation of the experience. So I think that there's been a change I would say there's a change in the dialogue in the African community. There are other, women, other African women who are in this profession, who are learning, who are growing, who are educating in the community to say, you know what, let's talk. How are you feeling? How is that impacting your day to day? And like Dr. Opara said, it's important to recognize how that impacts, how we function as individuals, to say this is part of our own self-empowerment, right? Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It shows strength within yourself also. Having that conversation of what strength looks like. I feel like that's what's changing the dialogue. So I have seen a change, to go back to your question. I have seen a change in our community as Africans as a whole, but I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And this is really part of it, having these tough conversations.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so jumping into COVID-19. People have been cooped home. I feel like our generation has not experienced anything like this ever before. No. So what is the impact on people's mental health based on this unprecedented event? The narrative changed for everybody.
Yeah.
You work, unless you were even those who are in the health industry and have to, what's the word? Essential workers. Even they have experienced the shift, even though they're still working normally, but they're working more. Those who are in the health, industry are facing more and more, people facing debts. Like on a regular day, maybe you're facing, I don't know how many beds or how many patients are assigned to, a nurse in a facility on a regular day. But I want to feel like those numbers probably doubled, tripled even, just because of COVID, because you had more people being admitted to hospitals. So what has been, or what, from your point of view, what are some of the things that people could possibly be going through as a result of COVID? We want to look at this from an angle of, adults, right? And parents, and then also children and, employees. So what are some of because I know we probably have some employers also who are totally clueless about how, this might be affecting the mental health of their employees. Should everything just be as normal, continue to work from home indefinitely? Or, am I slacking? The fact that I'm slacking a little bit in my work or looking a little disconnected during meetings, could that be a sign of something? Do I need to take some time off? Just kind of thing. So.
I can chime in. I think in particular with COVID-19, something that stood out for all of us is that this is the first time that we're globally all going through the same thing at the same time. And so you'll see that across the board, so many people are going through the same emotions and the same, and trying to interpret and process exactly what's kind of going on at this time. And I think when we focus particularly in the Black and African community, you see, as Dr. Ijeoma and Dr. Remy have mentioned, that a lot of people are very prone to not being vulnerable. And they also are told culturally that, they go through issues, but they go through issues silently without telling people their business. Because also when opening and talking and starting the dialogue, there's this fear that people will run and tell their business, right? Or spread rumors or create a narrative that they may not like, that may not represent them well. So during COVID-19, I think it's forced people to be vulnerable. It's forced people to come to terms with a lot of things that they may have not wanted to come to terms with. And in a sense, everyone is experiencing some type of grief right now. A lot of times when we mention grief, people think that it's, they've lost someone, or there's been a death in the family, but grief can be experienced by just you not being able to go through your day-to-day routine as you would normally. And so right now, a lot of people have been taken out of their comfort zone by being at home, being stuck at, with their family. We also have to take into account that sometimes home is not the most pleasant place for many people. And with that type of situation, there could be stress, there can be anxiety, there can be depression. And really it's a tough time, right? Because a lot of the time it's, okay, who do we reach out to now? Especially amongst, the African and Black communities. If you weren't open to talking to someone before, and you're kind of forced right now to want to kind of have that dialogue and have that conversation, because if not, it can get very overwhelming. I think although COVID-19 has brought so much turmoil and hurt so many people, I think it's something that was so much needed. I think it's been a time where we can reflect globally and really come to terms with feelings and emotions that we probably wouldn't have normally. It's made it's made us kind of come to stand still. And what I really like is that now mental health is not just you know, it's not that just that person on the street that's talking, or mental health is not just this person that's kind of like quote unquote possessed. It's now, oh, mental health can be brought about by just not being able to grasp what's currently happening in my life right now. Mental health can be brought about me not being able to really communicate properly with my family members or my friends. Mental health can be, you know, I'm not really being able to get the proper help or talk through what I'm going through right now. So it's changing the face and it's changing the conversation. And I think with therapists and psychotherapists and counseling and nonprofit organizations really stepping up to the plate, people are now understanding the importance of it, and they're now understanding that the resources aren't too far away, because I think during this time, a lot of people have stepped up to create that avenue for people to receive the help that they need.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ms.
That's-
Can I say something? Yeah.
It's an excellent point that you made. And labeling this as what it is, that it is a crisis, you know, and it's affecting everyone. And also understanding that how each individual families are responding to it is very different, right? Meaning that I may not be okay, you may be okay, right? And I may be the usual one who's okay. So understanding that, you know, the dynamics within families, you know, impact how one responds to the crisis. And when we're thinking about COVID-19 and really what it means in terms of educating the community, you know, working on getting help, you know, education, you have individuals who maybe were just comfortable in our space. We're not used to asking for help. And we're dealing with the pandemic that involves asking for help, to say, well, educate me on what it is. How do I go for help? Right. So that becomes a struggle, I think, sometimes that individuals face with asking for help during this process, not just with COVID-19, but also how do I identify what I'm feeling right now? How do I, you know, how do I learn how to cope with it? And then the other component that I want to keep in mind that, you know, Vanessa said, is that we're all used to our routine. You know, when we're stressed, most of the time, you know, we know what to do. We know who to call. You know, sometimes we may go for a walk, we may hang out with friends, go see family. But with the crisis, everything is sort of stripped and removed. You know, so for someone who in their 40s, 50s have always known how to respond to, you know, stress or trauma, now all of these things are removed. You know, so it's almost like taking baby steps to learning, well, how do I deal with it now? This is the new normal. This is kind of the new existence in this point. So it impacts in so many different ways.
Ms. Olawale, you wanted to?
Yeah, sure. I think that COVID-19 has been difficult for a lot of people, especially when you think about what they were going through prior to COVID-19. So in terms of the responses that we're all going to have, is going to be determined by the stressors that we had in our lives prior to COVID-19, and also the resources that we had prior to COVID-19. So if somebody had been going through a lot of stress, traumatic experiences, had familial issues, relationship issues, whether the children had some, you know, behavioral problems, whatever stressors that that person had, it's already a big knapsack on their back that is already weighing them down. So COVID-19 coming onto the screen can only exacerbate that. And it doesn't mean that just because you came into COVID-19 with a lot of stress that COVID-19 is going to make it worse. It also depends on what you have in that knapsack in terms of your coping mechanisms. So if you already have a really good social network of friends where you guys reach out to one another, you may not physically be able to see them, so that touch might not be possible, but being able to hear their voices and talk to them might be helpful. If you already have a good relationship in your home environment, then you may have time to spend with your children that you enjoy, and also spend with your spouse. But if you have marital problems, or you become overwhelmed at home because of one, you know, mental health issue or the other, or maybe finances is a problem, because, you know, this is really showing a lot of injustices that there are in America in terms of economic advantages and disadvantages, then this will be another problem. So, you know, I think how we're going to react to COVID-19 is highly dependent on how much, in terms of internal resources that we have, financial resources that we have, and the stresses that were brought to the table. And the other thing that I would like to add to it is, even if you came into COVID-19 with no issues, you are having the best life of your life, your vision board is, you're checking off that vision board, change always creates a sense of loss, and there's no way that you're going to have change without loss and then without grieving. And so in many ways, we're all grieving the loss of the things that we've always known, life that we've always had, predictability, stability. And so even if you didn't have any issues in the first place, this change is going to cause you to experience grieving, even if it's positive. That change is just the way that it is. You're losing something. So those are just the two things that I'd like to add.
Sure. So based on what you just said now, do you think, and I feel like, especially for the African community, because we have this hustle mentality, right? I think a lot of people act like, oh, we are visitors in this country. So like, there's a time factor. I have to make as much money as I can as quickly as possible. So I feel like we don't pause to grieve, like you said, pause to just take in things around us because we're constantly on the move, constantly on the go. So do you feel that it's necessary, like when things like this happen, or even in any, if you're even grieving under any circumstance, and I can understand that people use different coping mechanisms, do you feel like it is necessary to just stop and just pause? You know what I mean? Kind of reevaluate things, and rather than just, oh, something happened, oops, I'm right on. Things continue as usual. My usual patterns. I'm going to work as normal. I'm going to church. I'm talking to my friends as normal. Nothing is changing. Like, not that you have changed it, but do we need to take that time to kind of acknowledge what we're going through, what has just happened, right? And what should we do? Like, just kind of mourn the loss of something, or just acknowledge that there is a shift and there is a change, rather than just keep, just keep plowing as if things were normal, even though we all know nothing is normal right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head that it's important to grieve. And, one of the things that we said earlier is that grief comes in so many different forms. And I think that sometimes, like I said, let's call this what it is. It's a crisis. It's something that's traumatic. The level of trauma varies from person to person. One of the things that's also important, though, when we respond to a traumatic experience, that even when we feel that we are not responding, we are responding. Mm-hmm. So even when we're thinking that, well, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing, I'm just going to ignore what's happening because I'm fine, I'm good, but I'm doing the same thing and nothing changes. It's a traumatic, it's a response. It's a coping mechanism, because sometimes it's easier to not face what's going on. It's just easier to not think about, the killing of George Floyd. It's easier to think about the thousands of people who are dying. It's easier not to think about the fact that we're not seeing our friends anymore for right now, physically. It's just easier that way. So it is a coping. However, it can only get you but so far in this, in certain ways, especially if you're within a family setting. It comes out in other ways. Some of the effects of just kind of keeping that narrow, vision can come out in other ways, whether it's within your relationship within the home. So if you're going to work, you're doing the same thing, you're not, having any dialogue about how you're feeling, how others around you are feeling. It comes up in other ways. So work may be fine, but, someone may experience problems sleeping at night, sleeplessness. You may be sleeping well at night, but you may notice, or may not even notice, but exhibit increased anxiety. Mm-hmm. So I feel like in other ways, it'll show the reaction to the trauma. So to answer your question, it is good to acknowledge this is what's going on. This is how I really feel about it. And these are some of the things that I'm going to put in place to make sure that, I'm still moving and I'm still tracking.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry that it's loud in my background. I'm right next to the window and I live on a busy street, so please forgive me. Forgive me, please. But I agree 100% with everything you said. I think that the problem that we have in our community around mental health is that we don't know how to recognize trauma. We just think that, okay, I'm not crying every day. I'm able to go to work. I'm able to get my job done. My kids are all taken care of. So I'm fine. I don't need to see a therapist. I'm doing well, right? But then thinking about the symptoms of trauma and how well are you doing in your relationships? Are you one of those people that doesn't know how to stay in a relationship? Are you having difficulty being able to connect with people? Are you having difficulty sleeping? Remy was mentioning, are you having difficulty trusting people, being vulnerable, and how that has a lot of long-term effects, right? But how we're not taught to really recognize that. We're just taught to see the outward, okay, you're crying every day, you're hearing voices, your work is disrupted. That's when you should seek therapy. But it's like, no, there are steps to take before we even get to that point, and how we should just be teaching more about prevention, and teaching people how to recognize those symptoms. But I think to go back to what you were saying about how we need to, you know, how this opportunity, how COVID has kind of led us this opportunity to kind of just stop and reflect. I think in some cases it did. It did to kind of teach us how to slow down a little bit and reflect. But the problem with in America is that Black people we never have time to grieve. That's the problem, right? So, you know, as we were just getting into the motion of, okay, it's COVID, all right, I'm saving money, I'm starting to get close to my family. Boom, we now get hit with, okay, COVID is killing Black people more than anybody. You know, we now start hearing stories about going to the hospital and getting refused treatment because you're Black and doctors not taking you seriously. And we're seeing these large disparities with Black and brown people that are getting COVID and dying from it compared to others. Now we're reminded, okay, racial disparities, exist even with COVID. And then on top of that, we get hit with another one. Now we're reminded, okay, Black people, we're not really safe in America from COVID or from the police, right? Or from anyone, right? So, so we're not reminded of that. And these are things that I know for myself, I always knew these things. I do research on these things. I knew that Black people were just, we're just constantly fighting for our lives and constantly fighting to be seen, right? But I think what exacerbated everything is that we're now being faced with it. We're now being hit boom, boom, boom. So there really hasn't been enough time for us to grieve, right? To just really sit and just be like, all right, let's use this opportunity to not only grieve, but then also to self-reflect and grow. I think I was getting to the point, even for myself as a therapist, getting to the point of I felt like I was going to come out of this quarantine a whole new person. And now I'm just like back to square one, angry, upset, So yeah, so I think that, and this is why I think it's good that we have these type of spaces to talk about these things, right? To acknowledge the fact that as a community, we're grieving and we're mourning, multiple losses.
Yeah.
How we need to just not be afraid to just acknowledge that and just say, yes, maybe I don't know a Black man who's been killed by the police, or maybe I don't know anyone that's been affected by COVID, but I'm seeing this racial trauma daily and it's affecting me because now I'm scared as a Black person, as a auntie to many Black, nephews, or, just Black girls or whatever. I'm scared now and I want to be able to talk through this and stuff. So I think that, is something we need to highlight.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I wanted to, okay.
Sure, Vanessa, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add something real quickly. I think it's been very, especially amongst the African community, because I wanted to kind of touch, I think it's the way that Africans have kind of processed this versus Black African Americans. I think a lot of times, like you said, I think you said something about, Africans kind of just have this mindset where they're here for a time period and they're here to hustle and make their money and do what they need to do. And sometimes that's not the case, but I do think that sometimes they feel, I know in my family, I've had, family members say, there's no racism, going on, they do what they need to do. They're able to make money. They're able to get by without any issues. And then for the first time, it's like, boom, this is in their face live and direct. And they're like, oh, this applies to us as well. Yes, because you're Black. We're all Black. And when a police officer pulls you aside, or when you go to see a doctor, or when your child is getting an education, or when you're, given a job opportunity, people are seeing you for who you are, regardless of whatever your last name is. Yeah. And so I think it's super important that this has happened at this time because we don't have any distractions, and we're able to address this head on, right, and really see it for what it is. But I think once again, like Dr. Ejima was saying, it's like the social determinants of health. Like you're looking at a lot of these Black, brown communities, even African communities. You see a lot of people, they feel a sense of helplessness. When you're born into a certain zip code or area code, and automatically you're giving a certain amount of leeway or opportunity, you may feel that you may not achieve greatness. You may not be able to get to where you'd like to go, or get to where you'd like to be. But I think because this issue now with COVID being giving us time to really see it for what it is, I think it's now forcing us to address it. So like people who are in the health field, people who are very well aware of what socioeconomic status does to Black and brown communities, they've been known this, but now the whole world sees it for what it is: white, Black, Hispanic, no matter who you are. And I think now that we all are seeing it for what it is, it'll bring more awareness to what's going on and allow us to move accordingly. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. So what are some of the symptoms that comes with mental health? And I want us to kind of, first of all, again, this is for, and I know that a lot of the African community are in the health industry. A lot of them are nurses, doctors, so, you know, are in practitioners, and which probably means that they've been working, you know, crazily the last few months, you know, supporting COVID, you know, and all of that. So, and some of them might just not even realize that they're burned out or they need to take some time. You know, they're just plowing ahead and just putting in crazy hours. I had a friend of mine who was telling me yesterday he's been working about 17 hours, you know, almost on a daily basis. Yeah, and he's a health practitioner. So he was just kind of like, I want to go home right now and just go and crash. Like I literally have 8 hours to sleep for the first time in God knows how long. So he was rushing home. He was like, if gas finishes in my car right now, I literally will not even try to buy one. I'm just going to call Uber to take me home so that I can take my 8 hours of sleep. So, and I was thinking about somebody like that. I was like, I wonder if there is some kind of, you know, mental health impact there, working those long hours and in situations where you're with someone today, you know, they have COVID, and then next thing you know, they may have passed away, you know, more often than they normally would on a daily basis, and they're in line of work anyway. So what are some of the symptoms? Let's start with like professionals generally. What are some of the symptoms of, you know, like, you know, health, mental health, trauma, or something that people might not ordinarily know, that are not very obvious, but that you guys can point out to them? Remy, you want to go?
Sure. So when we talk about trauma, you know, oftentimes we talk about things that has happened to us, like what happened to me? What did I see? What did I experience? I think the other part to look at, especially when we're talking about medical professionals who are, you know, in the hospital, at the front lines, who are dealing with COVID, you know, in their faces every day, who are dealing with families, who are hearing their stories, who are seeing the deaths of individuals. There's another part that's important to point out, which is what we call vicarious trauma. And it's one of those things where just from hearing the stories of others, just from seeing others die, you know, what does the room look like when death happens? You know, what does it smell like? What does the body smell like? Even though this may not be a family member to you, there's a trauma that happens with that, especially if it's happening, you know, increasingly and, you know, more often. So that's important to point out. You know, sometimes, you know, there are clinicians or there are healthcare professionals who carry that home with them. You know, it may be the smell of it, you know, of death, of what the room smelled like, of the medication, that they may smell that at home.
Wow.
They may smell that on the way home, you know, even after they've showered, even after they've bathed. So you can have an individual that's saying, well, I'm okay, I just need to sleep, it's been a long day. But what about that vicarious trauma that could happen? You know, assessing the conversations that healthcare providers have with family members, you know, telling someone that a loved one is deceased, you know, hearing the cry, seeing the cry.
Yeah.
That could be a trigger also that, you know, healthcare professionals may not be aware of. So understanding how vicarious trauma, from hearing the stories, from being a part of the story, how that also can traumatize an individual. So just to keep that in mind, that, okay, are you having some of those symptoms? Yeah. Even when you leave the facility, are you having, you know, the smell, the senses, you know, being able to smell, being able to even taste sometimes, being able to taste, you know, what the areas tasted like when you were there. You may have that when you leave from the facility. So that's a sign of trauma, because you're not in that same environment, but when you are removed, you experience some of those things. So for someone who's still getting up every day, who's still going to work, but when they leave, they're dealing with some of these symptoms, that's the vicarious trauma that they're also experiencing. So just to pay attention to that, you know, are you experiencing anything that relates to your work environment when you leave? Are you having dreams about, you know, maybe not even your patients, but even family members, you know, being hospitalized, loved ones being hospitalized, even though they're not? Those are symptoms. So things just to look for, just a few examples.
Got it. Okay, awesome. I never heard about vicarious trauma before, but now I know. So thank you. And so does everyone who's watching. I hope you guys are listening to this. This is key and very important. So Ms. Olawale, do you want to chime in? What are some of the symptoms that, you know, professionals can
Yeah, I'll pay attention to things like just being irritable. I noticed that, with trauma, there's a lot that goes in there. So you can have some depression in trauma, you can have anxiety in trauma, it can even look like ADHD, right? Like trauma is like this big umbrella thing that many people can clinically present as maybe anxiety or depression or ADHD. But if you really take the time to do your assessment, you might actually realize that is rooted in trauma. So paying attention to other things like somatizing your emotions. Maybe you're noticing like you're having stomach issues, you're having heart palpitations, you are noticing that you're really high strung, like your muscles are really tense, you're having headaches. And like Dr. Remy said, you're having dreams. And sometimes the dreams might not even be about people going to the hospital or dying, but that sense of helplessness that has a theme in your dream can show up. I've seen people that, they might have experienced sexual trauma that nobody knew about and they didn't share with anyone. And they always have this recurrent dream of house burning and people finding out that the house burned, right? So it comes down to secrecy and something bad happening in their lives. But there's always a theme to those type of dreams, even if it doesn't look exactly like that. So pay attention. I noticed that when people struggle with depression and anxiety, especially with women, it may show up more as irritation. And then for men, it may show up more like anger. So just paying attention to your own mood and how quickly it is shifting is going to be important. Are you able to actually sleep? Sleep is one of those things that is very important to your body being able to process the traumas of the day. And one of the things that tend to go when people are having extreme, any kind of exposure to trauma is the sleep just disappearing, or maybe you're sleeping more than usual. Some people are able to sleep, but they're sleeping more, but then they wake up and they still don't have enough energy and they don't understand why. So if you notice like you're having a dip in energy, it doesn't matter how much you're sleeping, that might be something that you may wanna, pay attention to. Or you're noticing like you just can't focus. Like focus is another thing that goes when we're experiencing trauma, depression, or even anxiety. A lot of these things tend to overlap in terms of symptoms. So if you notice that you want to read and you typically can read things, but your face, your eyes just can't keep you can't keep your eye on the page, you're forgetful. Those are also other types of symptoms that you should pay attention to.
If I may just piggyback to that, when we're talking about depression and PTSD, oftentimes, we identify those individuals who are crying, who are not sleeping well, who are just quiet, they're withdrawn. When we think about depression, at least clinical depression, it really falls on the spectrum. So there's one thing to look at. It's not always the individuals who are doing, the previous things that I just mentioned. What about those who are on the opposite end? Like Ms. Olawale said, what about those who they can't sleep? They're not sleeping all the time, but they cannot sleep. They're not crying, but they're aggressive, right? They're dealing with anger. So even the opposite, right? That's not what we just see. That's not pleasant. What about the opposite? Or somebody's eating too much. Go ahead.
Yes. I would just like to add what you just said. I would like to add apathy to that. Apathy is one of those weird ones that we tend not to like talk much about, but it's a real sign that something is wrong here, right? So you don't really have a lot of feelings about a lot of stuff. My clients call it blah. Something that seems that that others would react with more emotions, and you're just completely flat, and you are having difficulty accessing your emotions. Those are also things that you should think about when you were talking about the other part of the spectrum, Dr. Remy. I thought about that.
So I'm actually, before I jump to Dr. Gemma, so I wanted to just mention this, that when you guys mentioned the whole, about dreams, it just made me think how, when you're having this kind of unusual dreams, how a lot of times in African community, they just say, something bad is about to happen. You know what I mean? There's a witch or somebody's following you from your father's village, and I'm like, guys, every time you have an unusual dream, are you guys hearing? Is that nobody's following you from your father's village? It could literally be, a response to a trauma that you experienced. And because we tend to compartmentalize things and just move things, you might not even realize that something that happened the day before or 2 days ago is what you're actually reacting to. When you're having these dreams, or maybe you're saying, oh, you're having sleeplessness, and you're like, somebody's doing me, or I ate this one. That's like, no, guys. Sometimes, and you guys are listening and hearing this, it could be that you are responding to something traumatic that may have happened. So we really, I feel like, and I'm writing the some of the symptoms that have been mentioned. I'm putting that on the points on the comment section on YouTube so that people can see this later. I think it's very, very important that we understand that, and the reason I mention it is because you know how generally anytime people feel unwell in the African community, they say go use paracetamol or go use Advil or Tylenol for everything, or they say go drink water. And I promise I'm guilty of that. My son says, "Mommy, my tummy hurts," and the first thing I say is go drink water. And you know, if he doesn't feel better, 5-10 minutes, then that's when I kind of sit up and like, okay, what's going on? So it's not everything that you just push under the bridge and just say, go, oh, you just need to sleep, or oh, you just need to drink water, or you just need to use Advil, the headache would go. And the headache might go temporarily, but you have to focus on what exactly caused it in order for you to be able to find a true solution for that. So just wanted to point that out, guys, that everyone is really paying attention to some of the symptoms. And if you guys are not taking notes, I'm taking notes. I have my notes in here so that I can, just kind of focus and dig more into all of this. So Dr. Ijeoma, what are some of the symptoms that may have not been mentioned here that you can think about?
So I think I think the ladies really answered it perfectly, but especially irritability, I think that's a big one that is often overlooked, and sleeping a lot, right? And waking up exhausted, I think that's a big one. But just to add, in regards to vicarious trauma, social media is a big culprit of that too. So you don't even have to be a nurse or a doctor or be in the room or even hear about, or being a clinician and hear about somebody that died. Just watching constant images of being told COVID is coming to your house, is about to kill you, or or being told like all these Black men are getting killed, and not only hearing about it, but seeing actual videos of people being executed, right? And just seeing that over and over and over again, seeing people argue with each other, about fighting for racism, and another person doesn't think racism doesn't exist. All of these can have an impact on your mind, and just your overall stress levels. And I think what I want people to walk away from this this panel event knowing is that there is a huge connection between mental health and physical health. There's no, mental health and just experiencing all these levels of stress has a direct impact on your heart health. Leads to heart disease, leads to an increased rate of heart attacks, leads to diabetes, leads to overeating, leads to obesity, which could lead to a whole bunch of other different, different diseases. We need to talk about that. Leads to high blood pressure, all of these things that, that people are more willing to talk about as opposed to mental health. But if you can actually just focus on your mental health as a part of prevention, it can prevent a lot of these other symptoms from taking place, right? So, and I think we see that a lot in our community. I know with Nigerians, I've been hearing more and more younger Nigerians dying from heart attacks, or like, dying from diseases. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like at 40, 50, 60 years old, and having no idea, like, going to the doctor and being physically okay, but not really, doing, understanding, okay, maybe they were overly stressed, or experiencing that trauma. And like you mentioned, trauma manifests in other ways, like dreams and so forth, right? But I think that it's a defense mechanism of us to just attribute everything to the devil. I just say it's the devil, because it makes us feel better, right? It makes us feel better because it's like, okay, I don't have to do anything. Yeah. It's the devil's fault. The devil, so all I gotta do is pray about it, and then God will deal with it, and then I move on, right? Instead of actually doing the work to say, wait a minute, maybe God is trying to tell me something. Maybe God is putting this in my head so that I could be more aware of what's happening around me and find, help, right? I'm a big believer in combining religion, spirituality, and mental health. I believe that God gave us all the wisdom to be therapists, and to be able to help our communities. So I think that we need to talk more about that, about, allowing God to be the one to give us these signs, right? It is not always the devil, right? We have to stop believing the devil has so much power over us, we have to stop believing that. But I do think it's a defense mechanism that we use, right? Because it's just easier to put it on the devil than to actually say, maybe I am depressed, or maybe I am, anxious, and maybe I'm not as strong as I thought I was, right? But reframing that and saying, no, you are strong. For even acknowledging the fact that you need to seek, talk to a mental professional, acknowledging that you have feelings, and that you're, these feelings of this trauma is manifesting into something that you need to take control over. That in itself is strength. So it kind of goes back to my first statement of just being, there's strength in being vulnerable, and asking for help. Yeah.
Now that you mentioned the church, and you mentioned how, well, not necessarily church, but how, people attribute all of this to the devil, which
Yeah.
makes me want, and somebody mentioned this in the comment section, which, do you guys think that churches should talk more
Absolutely.
about mental health?
Okay,
Absolutely.
I feel like a lot of people look to churches for the A-OK to
Absolutely.
think outside of the box of religion on certain issues. You know what I mean? Like, if the church does not talk, if the pastor does not talk about it on the pulpit, or if the church doesn't have any kind of mental health resources, then they don't think it's okay to look in the direction of, this could be a mental health issue. But I feel like we probably should, and maybe we need to start with our local churches as well and see what our pastors would say. Like, are they open to having discussions like this?
I think you also have to, I'm sorry, did you?
No, go ahead.
Just real quick, I think we also have to acknowledge too that our pastors don't know everything. So, they're not mental health counselors. So we have to be careful with that. They have to be willing to allow people like us to come and teach them, because they themselves don't believe that anxiety and depression is not as of God. They're like, nope, you crying at home at night, go pray about it, and in fact, not only you praying about it, if you give me money, give the church money, all of that stuff will go away, right? So we have to, I think it's important for church to be, especially in the African community, because we love our churches, and and that's a great thing. But I think pastors need to be more willing to have us, talk to them and humble themselves, and have us talk to them about how to recognize mental health symptoms and how to refer their members out to outside resources.
Okay.
If I may add, Vanessa, you say something and then I'll add.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Did you want to?
No, you can go ahead. I'll add after you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted to add something very briefly. I think another, going back to, so one, I was going to say that something to also look out for is addictive behaviors, especially during this time. I think a lot of people use and abuse things when they don't know really what's manifesting, what's taking place. So sometimes you'll see people are addicted, what they normally would have taken, maybe normally they would have taken a glass of wine every night, but now because of everything that's going on and they're having, a hard time processing things, they may be taking maybe 3 or 4 glasses, right? And so just being more, cognizant of some of these behaviors like drinking, sex, overeating, anything really that could be end up being detrimental to the person's health. But then also furthermore, I think just speaking from my experience and my work that I do, I think for us, what we like to do is when we come into a country, we know that this is a collaborative effort. We're not here solely by ourselves. We're here to collaborate with stakeholders, policymakers, youth advocates, whoever, and more so, and more importantly, the church, because we see that they have a huge influence, especially amongst African American and Black communities and African communities as well. And so I think, the church definitely needs to go through training with professionals to understand, one, what mental health is, right? And understanding how mental illness can manifest. But I also think, getting them to also be advocates of mental health would make so much more of a difference. I think it's not an or the other. It's not, let's teach them and then leave them. No, let's work together. Let's come together, combine forces, combine, our knowledge, and work together to help people to understand that, one, this is something that they need, right? And two, it's not mental health, it's not therapy or Christ or prayer. No, they're interchangeable. We can do this together. Not one is bad, not one is better than the other, but collaboratively, we can bring more awareness and allow people to be able to feel comfortable talking about mental health, even in the church.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, that's exactly what I was going to touch on in terms of educating, not just educating the church. When we're talking about spirituality, mental health, seeking help, help-seeking behavior, what does it look like? I think it's more than, as clinicians, going into the churches saying, well, this is what mental health, symptoms look like. This is who you should talk to. I think it's also educating those who are within the community, meaning the church environment, those who are willing to just stand up and say, I'm okay with educating, right? Because people respond to what they're comfortable with who they're comfortable with.
Sure.
As a clinician, and I believe in Christ as well, but if as a clinician, I come in and I'm an outsider to that environment, and I'm trying to educate on what mental health looks like, seek help if you need it, it may not be as receptive compared to a congregation member who has been trained, like Vanessa said, who has been trained to talk about mental health, depression, what it looks like to their peers, to those who are within that same community, right? People respond to those who are within their network within their community. So it's very important to not only come in and add to it, but also create sort of advocates, organizers within the community to teach and to educate as well, and to empower.
Absolutely. So Dr. Jim, I know you work a lot with youths, right? So from the children's perspective, right? Have you seen, the past few months, have you seen like an influx or like a major increase in number of, youths or, children at large who are experiencing any kind of mental health difficulties?
So I think, yes. I think that it also depends on the age. So I think that what we're seeing is that, social isolation is being something that's experienced by everybody, but especially children, right? So children are used to just spending most of their time in school with their friends and not spending as much time at home, right? And I think that, children, we were already seeing an addiction to social media, with kids, but now it's even, it's even more extreme, right? But I think that the problem is that with children, and I think this is something that's across board, not even just within the Black community, is that we're not taught to actually sit down and ask a teenager or a young child, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling today, right? We just assume, okay, just go do your homework and leave me alone. You'll be fine. You'll be okay, right? But I think that, and I just published an article on this, on just being able to recognize depressive symptoms and also suicide ideation in children, right? We're seeing a rise in suicide ideation and suicide amongst Black children. So I think this is a time when we have to be very careful. We have to actually really make an effort to check in with kids and teenagers and ask them specifically, how are you feeling? What thoughts are you having? Are you feeling depressed that you can't see your friends? If you are, let's figure out how we could have family night or friends night or something, giving children a space to talk about their feelings, right? Because they're children, they do have a say, and teach them also to how to recognize these emotions and not retreat to social media or further isolate themselves. Because I think after this quarantine, because it'll end eventually and they go back to school, we're probably going to see a rise in a lot of behavioral issues in schools. We're going to see a rise in maybe abusing of substances amongst teenagers too. Because these are things that they need to help cope with. So I'm hoping, with all this attention that we're giving to mental health and, with COVID and and racial trauma, and so forth, I'm hoping there are going to be resources in place for kids in the school system to be able to connect them to virtual therapy or just to be able to educate them. I'm scared that we're not going to see that. And I'm worried about what the long-term consequences are going to be. But to answer your question, absolutely. Yeah.
What can we do at home as parents? So, because I feel like I'm not so sure, just in case the schools are not really going to rise up to this or do anything, right?
Yeah. So, and I'm not trying to blame schools. They're overcome with a whole bunch of other stuff. So yeah. Because this was the issue even before pre-COVID. It was the issue.
Pre-COVID, yes. Yeah. What can we do from the homestead, as parents? What are some of the things that we can do to, just kind of help our children and ensure that they don't, for those of them that are fine right now and have always been fine, we want to ensure that they don't get into that, that space at all. And for children that are already struggling, we want to make sure that, things are not excavated by any chance with them. I know with my 11-year-old, one of the things that, well, not necessarily mental, but sometimes when we go to certain places, and I'm reading his, his face, his body language, and I'm seeing that he's not really feeling and not happy, or he's just been quiet. And normally he's a very precarious child and everything. So we do what we call green light, yellow light, red light. And because sometimes kids are shy and don't want anybody else to know what's going on around them. So I just say, hey kiddo, green light, red light, yellow light. And so red light means I want to leave my environment, or we need to have a conversation right now. Yellow light means, I'm okay, but it could be better. And then green light is, I'm having the time of my life. You don't have to worry about me. So when he says red light, I just drop whatever I'm doing, whoever it is I'm speaking with, whatever it is, and we find a quiet corner. What's going on? Talk to me so that we can,
I think there's a number of things that parents can do. First off, I'm not a parent, so I do want to give my hats off to parents because I know this is not easy with the homeschooling. I can't imagine having to do all that. Like during this time. So I take my hat off for parents. I know that this is a difficult time for parents that have children right now, but I think what parents can do, social support is huge, right? Having children that feel like they're supported by their family, by their peers, by by adult allies, are just more likely to just do well, right? Mental health, developmental outcomes are just more likely to just do better than than everyone else. So I think spending time with kids, maybe having family night once a week, playing games, having conversations that they'd be interested in. So like maybe talking to them about TikTok, or saying, hey, let me see your latest TikTok video. They'll probably be embarrassed, but then after a while, they'll be comfortable knowing, okay, wow, my awkward parent is trying to like talk to me about these things. Okay, let me use this opportunity, to have a conversation, ask them what their favorite TikTok person is, or Instagram, or show them like, look, I want you to teach me this world. I'm old. I want you to teach me this world, right? So I think when you give kids the power to so for them to teach you about what's going on in their own circle, they feel comfortable, right? They feel empowered, and they feel like, okay, I know something that mommy and daddy don't. Let me show them how to do this. Going for walks with your kids, and just doing simple things like that, until even going to the park, depending on what area of how affected, if you're allowed to, depending on where you live in America, or if you're allowed to because of the quarantine. I think simple things like that can actually really improve the outcomes of children. But then also we need to also talk to kids about race as well, because kids are hearing about it, and I don't think we do a good job within the entire Black community to talk to prep kids about racism and potential racial trauma that they may experience, right? Because kids are seeing it, they're seeing it on their social media timelines right now. They're seeing, and they may be seeing opposite things. They may be seeing a lot of Black power. They may be seeing a lot of anti-Black stuff, right? So talking to them about that, reminding them that you are beautiful, you are handsome, you are strong, you are Black, and they're going to be people, or we're going to call them demons, who may not like you for your skin color, and that's their fault. That's not yours, and just continue to strive for, to be better, or, whatever it is. Just, so I think now more than ever, we need to have those conversations with our kids, right? Because they're, like I said, they're seeing it, and they may bring that to school with them, and that's going to add, in addition to the social isolation and all the other things that they were dealing with. And then lastly too, I think that we need to normalize therapy. I think it's important to normalize family therapy. I'm a family therapist, and I honestly wish that I wish I had family therapy. I wish every family that I know gets family therapy. I really do, especially in the African community. You don't have to be diagnosed with a mental illness to get a therapist, like you just don't. And I wish that more Africans knew this, or Black people in general. That's all.
Can I just share a quick story briefly? I just wanted to, I came into contact with a young man this week, and he, expressed to me that his brother had just passed away last week. He's Nigerian American, and his brother passed away because he was a little manic, and he also was dealing with bipolar disorder, but his parents never acknowledged it. They chucked it up to a personality disorder. And as a response to that, he ended up getting addicted to marijuana, and he ended up overdosing. And I think, more than anything, I believe it was like a blessing just even coming to contact with him and hearing his story, but it broke my heart because, when he was expressing to me how what toll this is now taking on his family, one of the things that he mentioned was that the fact that his mom wouldn't even allow people to know how their son really passed away, and I think these are hard conversations to have. I mean, my heart breaks just even talking about it, but I think it is just so important that we stop hiding things and stop putting things under the carpet. I don't know who's going to come in contact with this forum or this conversation, but please, I beg, I plead, if your child is going through something, if there is someone in your family that needs help, get them the help before it is too late. And I know it's uncomfortable, and I know sometimes it brings fear and shame, but it is so much better to get help than to lose someone that you dearly love.
Yeah, I agree. So that fast forwards us to my next point, actually, Vanessa, and maybe we can just jump right into that. As I think the reason a lot of people hide things in the African community is because of the stigmatization, right? You get divorced, and then you become the talk of the town, and all of a sudden, all of the problems that you are or have in this world, people just make it a topic, and then and I think I recently found out someone that I know had been actually divorced for a couple of years, and nobody around her knew. Why? Because of the stigmatization. She didn't want to be looked into that category. So what kind of advice would you guys give everybody? Like, how, from our point, because I feel like if we're not stigmatizing people, then people feel more open about having conversations about certain things, difficult things like that. I think the mother who lost a son, was probably afraid of what will people say. I'm of the opinion, and I live my life according to what I say, not according to what will people say. I just do me, and I feel like eventually the world will come around and people will adjust, and you will just have to live with that. As long as whatever I'm doing is not illegal and it's not immorally wrong, you will be okay eventually. So what kind of advice would you give people to be a little bit more inclusive? When they hear people are going through certain things, what are the things we're not supposed to be doing, things we're not supposed to be saying, the reactions that we're not supposed to be having, so that we don't make people feel uncomfortable. We don't make people feel, have to withdraw or hide things from people. Remy, do you want to start with?
Yeah, I think I was gonna just respond to what you're saying about just being comfortable in your skin and being comfortable with the decision that you make for yourself, and just feeling like, okay, well, the word will follow. That is the ideal situation. That's what we all hope for our children, for ourselves. But we also have to understand that it's a process to get there. And sometimes we're kind of shifted off that path, depending on what's going on. So I think first things first, everything really goes back to education. Learning to have empathy in teaching, empathy for others, for experiences, for situations that, it's not always a black and white in certain situations. To just be able to hear people out and be supportive, right? And it's about showing love, it's about connecting with others, and you may not know what you say could save somebody's life. What you also say can also impact someone's life negatively, just to add on to what Vanessa was saying. So it's really important just to teach empathy, and that comes, from our experiences, from being a child, from growing up, empathizing with those who make decisions that are different from ours, who look differently, even with speaking with race, who look differently, who behave differently, who come from different backgrounds. That's something that has to be taught, that becomes innate eventually. And that, that impacts how we respond to others, whether we're talking about divorce as an adult or just how we look at relationships and marriage and, whatever it is. So I think it's really about teaching, being open-minded, and just coming from a supportive perspective and non-judgmental, and looking at it this way, speaking of the whole racial division and what's going on right now. I mean, how does it feel when we are judged for being Black? How does it feel when we are demonized for how we present, how we speak, connecting it to the individual and using that same empathy towards others in other situations. So it's really, all ties back to, I think, education, just being open-minded and having these types of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've made amazing recommendations there, Dr. Remy. I think that as human beings, it's normal for us to not want to feel judged by our community, because we would like to be accepted by our community, and anything that goes against that acceptance is something that humans generally just don't like to do. So while I like the idea of, I don't care what anyone says and I don't care what anyone does, it is human to care about what anyone does. It's what's kept us alive. It's what's kept us continue to evolve as humans. And so anything that has to do with being kicked out of any group is detrimental to humans' mental health. And that's the reason why things like divorce can be really hard, breaking up in relationships, being kicked out of a church, things like that can be really tough for our mental health. So I just want to normalize the fact that it's okay that you want to hold back information and that you're afraid. That's just what makes you human. What I would like to add to that, though, is I'm certain that you have some internal resources already, like compartmentalization. There's a place for compartmentalization. I love compartmentalization, so you can move forward and be able to do what you need to do, right? So some of us have PhDs in certain skills. However, sometimes we've used those skills for so long that the efficacy over time has reduced, right? And so look at the skills that you already have. How effective are they for you, right? And I just want to encourage you to get more skills. Just get more skills to add to your toolbox. The goal is not to get rid of all your skills. If you don't like to face issues and you like to move from one issue to another, that's fine. But are there other more adaptive ways that we can help you? If you come from a low trust community like we do, because we really do come from a low trust community, it behooves us to hide information and not share, right? I mean, are we surprised? Are we shocked? This is how we roll. This is what we do. But what I would say is, what are the resources that you have in your community? Is there a pastor that you feel comfortable talking to that you know will not be the CNN and broadcast your information on the pulpit? Is there an auntie or an uncle that you may feel comfortable with that has shown that, you know, they can have discretion? If not, that is what mental health clinicians are for, right? Because we, by law, have to hold your information private. We have to hold that confidence. And you really should look at the resources. Some people might be like, okay, I want to go to a Nigerian therapist. There are not a lot of us out there, truthfully. But I want to go to a Black therapist. Then go and check out like Black Girls Network, because they have a whole list of therapists who are Black that can really relate to the issues that you have. But I just want to say to you, if you're secretive, you're just a product of our community. Okay, welcome. You're welcome. Sit down. Okay, now let's come up with a plan for how we'll move you from where you are and just add more tools to your toolbox.
And just to add to that, and thank you for that perspective of talking about the whole group dynamics and acceptance, because that's so important, you know, and it's not necessarily just a Nigerian thing. I think, like you were saying, it's a cultural thing. Americans even do it within their families. You want to be accepted by people. So, you know, so that makes sense. But I think just for the other perspective, I think people that are watching who want to learn how to be more empathetic with their friends and family, right? You just say, as a sensitive person, you should be more open. But if you don't have anybody in your circle that's not going to judge you, who you would tell that to? So I think we need to also teach other people, how do you be more, you know, understanding? You know, because I think people don't even know. I think people don't know when we're being judgmental, you know. So I think, you know, if, as an example, if somebody tells you something, oh, I'm thinking about getting divorced, or my husband's beating me, or something that may sound embarrassing, I think the first thing to do is say, I'm proud of you for even opening up and telling me that. I know that was hard for you to do that, and thank you for sharing that information with me. I'm going to keep it to myself. And not go around bragging to everybody saying, oh, can you believe what this girl just told me? Like, just keep your mouth shut, because that says more about you than that other person, right? If you are enjoying gossiping and judging people, you know, based on whatever it is that they're going through, especially after this person has confided in you, that says a lot about your character. So you have to think, do you want to be known as that person that's just so hurt inside that you enjoy spreading other people's hurt, spreading other people's, you know, whatever it is they're going through? You know, you need therapy, you know, like we all need therapy, but someone that has that character says a lot about you, you know? So I think if we change that perspective and teach people how to just be there for, you know, how to just be there for their friends and family, and so forth. Also keeping your advice to yourself, right? You know, like, I think that's another thing too. We start telling people stuff and they give us advice, and it's like, I didn't even ask you for all that. You're like, I just want you to sit and listen. Just listen, right? You're not the expert of my life. You know, we're not, you know, you're not an expert. Just listen to me. And when I ask you for advice, I'll ask you and I'll appreciate it. But if I didn't ask you, then just listen, you know, and just be there, you know. So I think that those are some steps that I hope people can practice with their friends and family moving forward.
Vanessa, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think everyone's pretty much covered everything. I think, you know, there's power in vulnerability, but unfortunately, when you've been burned before, it can be hard, you know. And let's, you know, in vulnerability, there's also, you're entitled to, you know, have your own privacy, right? Not everybody needs to know what's going on in your life. This is not to say that if you get divorced or you're going through something, you need to announce it to everybody. But I think what everyone has said is just finding a safe space, you know, finding that friend, that therapist, the counselor, that pastor, whoever that person is to you, wherever you feel like you can be truly yourself. I think it's just so important. So yeah.
Use your discretion to find people that you can open up and stuff. And then don't take all of the burden. Don't, you know, have all the burden on your shoulders by yourself. You know, just always
and another thing is you'll seldom realize that you're not alone, right? A lot of people, they say things and they come out, and when you go to some of these conferences or when you find out that as you're talking to people and being vulnerable, people have experienced the exact same things. Like, we're not in this alone. I promise you.
And I'm always an advocate of, you know, I'm always an advocate of if you've been through things, you know, traumatic experiences, whatever it is, you know, I'm always an advocate of being okay about sharing. I know a lot of people are like, well, don't share on social media. I'm like, no, you know, there are two things. If you're sharing because you just want people to be liking and commenting, that's one thing. If you're sharing because you know that somebody else out there has been through or is currently going through what you're going through and could learn one or two things or read or just get a little bit of hope, then I feel like it's okay, like the intent behind it. So use your discretion. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to ask for help at all. I've put in the number for people to dial in if they want to dial in. Our last question is, how do you get help if you are experiencing any kind of mental trauma? If you recognize some of the things that we're talking about, what are some of the ways that you guys feel like people can get help or should get help?
I can,
Yeah.
Sure. As well, one of our panelists mentioned earlier that therapy is for everyone, really. You know, there's no label, there's no perfect client, there's no people that's therapy is for. It's for everyone. You know, and one thing I always say is that if you can find it, if everyone can find a great therapist, we all will be better off, really, yeah. Because it's about finding that neutral space, that safe space, and someone who's also neutral to your situation. So we're looking for help. You don't have to, have an actual diagnosis. You don't have to self-diagnose. But if you just know that you are in need of that additional support, even starting at something as simple as calling your insurance. Calling your insurance, talking to them about, what you're looking for, the type of therapy that you're looking for, and sometimes they can provide you with that resource in your area. There's therapy for Black girls. There's psychologytoday.com. There's so many avenues, that you can go and search. And oftentimes, one of the things that people don't know is that your insurance will cover this. When it comes to mental health and physical health, at this point, it's pretty much on the same level. So it's important to use your insurance. You're paying for it, so use it, even if it's just to just vent to someone. And therapy doesn't have to mean that you're seeing a therapist for years. It could just be a current situational stressor, and you just need someone to talk to. It could be a couple of sessions. It could be 2 years. It could be as long as you need it. So so trying different avenues, calling your insurance, Psychology Today. If you want to be specific with African American clinicians, there's therapy for Black girls. You can get a plethora of resources on that as well.
I wanted to just chime in real quick and say that, of course, we want to always normalize therapy, but sometimes I think another thing that people shy away from is medication. People seldom like to, they don't like to talk about it because they rather, the side effects, one, that could potentially bring it into, they'd rather pray through it or, go through another means of treatment. But I think normalizing medication, because sometimes we have to take them to be able to, be able to operate and get through our day and function the way that we need to. So also, being able to take that step and go see maybe a psychiatrist or, going to the hospital to get an evaluation. Also, thank God for social media and for different apps that have been created now. They have apps where you don't even have to see someone. If you don't want to see someone face to face, they can at least, it's not a diagnosis, but it can allow you to see, okay, what your potential symptoms may be presenting as. And when you go through those apps, you'll be able to use it. And then furthermore, go to, a professional if you feel like that's what needs to be taken. But yeah, that's pretty much what I want to
Can you mention, do you know any of the
apps
off the top of your head?
So Talkspace is good. Talkspace is a good one. They also have the Mental Health First Aid also has an app as well. NAMI, the National Mental Health Alliance, they also have a couple of tools and resources that you can check online as well. Also, Taraji P. Henson's organization just started virtual therapy for people who may not be able to afford it in vulnerable communities. So it's something to also look into. It's becoming very much it's becoming more popular, and I think a lot of people are developing a lot of apps that are helpful and useful to look out for.
And there's also teletherapy. So if you don't want to physically go in person, especially with the pandemic, you can see someone in the comfort of your own space, wherever that is, your home, your car, wherever that is.
And just to add, just self-disclosure. So I actually just found a therapist for myself a couple of weeks ago, and I absolutely love her. She's amazing. She's a Black woman. She's just so amazing. And just to add, it is, and I think it's important. I tell my students this. I think it's important for clinicians to also have therapists. I think number one, as a clinician, you should know how it feels to be on the other side. To understand just what clients are dealing with, understanding what kind of questions elicit certain responses. And I think the best way to know that is to be a client too. And I think as also as a clinician, we all have issues, right? So we have to work through our issues before we can help someone else. But one of the reasons why I sought out therapy was just being a Black woman in America. I think every Black person should have a therapist, honestly. I really do. Like, I think just dealing with the, trauma of being Black right now, and just being a Black woman who's successful, who's in the predominantly white space, I really wanted to have someone who looks like me and understands my experiences to talk through those issues, so it's not something that is just staying in me. I'm releasing that energy to out there, so that I could be healthy and move forward. I think, and just to tell, if anyone is listening that's looking for a therapist, how I found her with Psychology Today. I put in like a zip code. I didn't want to be honest with you, I didn't want to find a therapist in my area, because I know all the therapists. I'm like, half of them are students. So so I found a therapist like an hour away from me. We have virtual therapy sessions, and I called her. She was very, she's very sweet. I gave her my insurance card, and she was able to do the verification to make sure that my insurance she accepts my insurance.
Yeah.
And also, I think now is the best time to find a therapist, because the copays are waived because of the whole COVID thing. So a lot of insurance companies are waiving copay. So if you live in the States and you're looking for a therapist, try your best to do that now. And because it's virtual therapy, I don't have to leave my house. I could see her. I'll eventually maybe see her in person once this whole thing calms down, and so forth. So just to put that out there. It was a little difficult finding her, I won't lie. I reached out to 4 different therapists, and she was the only one that responded. So I just wanted people to be aware of that, because don't be discouraged too. Just keep, reaching out to like 3 or 4 different people, and hopefully the person that you are more in line with will reach out, and then you could schedule and then move forward.
Where did you find her? You said
psychologytoday.com.
I actually have a quick question. So I've been actually looking for a therapist as well, and I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts as clinicians on finding a therapist that you may already know? So like, maybe I would say I maybe dealt with this person more professionally than anything, but it was just more of like a partnership, and it was very brief. Would you recommend maybe going back to that person for professional help, or do you feel like it should be someone that you don't know and don't have a relationship with?
I think it depends. Like if it's like a professional, like you just met her and she's a psychologist or therapist, and you guys don't have like a type of relationship, but you connect with her, I say, why not, right? That would be great. Personally, I know too many of them to even, it's just, we have friends and stuff. It's just like, it would just be too
conflict of interest, yeah.
Too familiar. If I'm talking to a friend, I want to talk to a professional who will give me her unbiased opinion. And then also, I'm Nigerian, I'm also paranoid. I don't want everybody to know. As Nigerians, we want everybody to be paranoid. So, so
completely.
Yeah, so I'm like, I don't want you telling people but what happened in my childhood. So yeah, so so yeah.
I can believe
is finding someone who is neutral.
Yeah,
who can be neutral, and who's also neutral in terms of your life. Like there's no necessarily personal connection to you.
Right.
And just to say something about finding a therapist, I think sometimes what discourages people is that they'll call, they may see a therapist, and oftentimes, with my outpatient practice, my clients would tell me, you're the 3rd therapist I've been to. The first one did this, the second one did that, so I'm hoping this works out. And I always encourage them and just kind of commend them for doing that, for sticking with it. Because oftentimes, someone will reach out to a therapist and they see the person and there's no connection, and that's the end of it. Or they didn't like what the therapist said, and this is not going to work for me. So I encourage everyone who's considering this to just to stick it out. The same way you're trying to connect with the therapist also, as clinicians, we're also trying to make sure that for your therapeutic benefits, this is a good fit. So sometimes, even if sometimes, clinicians may say to you, based on what's going on, I feel that you may be a better fit with this particular clinician. May I recommend you? And not to take offense to that, it's really about your well-being, removing the clinician, how they feel. Just keep that in mind, be persistent with looking for the right fit for you. And if you ever, recommend to go somewhere else, don't take it personal. It's about, finding, like I said, the best fit, what's going to work best in your situation.
So do you guys feel like, and I know I said that was the last question, but based on what you guys said, do you feel like, or rather, are there pointers for people that are listening? Because right now the comment section, it was like, yeah, I'm gonna go get a therapist, and I think now we're making an impact, so that's good. So yeah, that's really, really good. I'm loving what I'm seeing on the comment section. Are there things that we should look for in a therapist that would make us feel like, okay, I think I'm in the right place with the right person? You know what I mean? Do we need to have some kind of background connection? Do you feel like a Nigerian therapist will understand some of the issues I experienced with my Nigerian parents because of the way, Mommy, I'm not complaining about you. My mom's on YouTube. And my dad is probably watching from Nigeria. I'm not commenting. I'm not generalizing to you guys are awesome. I'm just saying, do you feel like a Nigerian therapist will better, connect or understand where when you're telling them your parents are sitting on you to bring a man home, or to do this or do the things that are typically associated with Nigerians. And when you mention to other cultures, they're like, they just cannot relate because that's not their experience. What do you think?
I think that's a great question. Yeah. And I think for me, I think it also is personal, right? So I think for me, I grew up in America, born and raised in America, so I have a very different experience than someone who was brought up in Nigeria, even though we still share the same values and culture. So for me, I was looking for a Black therapist, preferably African-American, but then had an Afrocentric focus, right? Because there are a lot of African-Americans who have that Afrocentric focus and respect the values of Africans, right? So I was very specific in what kind of therapist I went. I think that's also because I'm a therapist, so I just kind of know, these are key things that would benefit me. I wanted someone that focused on racial identity, and I really wanted an older Black woman. So I found that, thankfully, and I'm a stalker, so I was like Googling her, like went on her website. I was doing like hardcore background check, okay, and I felt this connection even just looking at the website. So that was enough for me to just to just go for it. But I think it really depends, right? I think I don't want to create this expectation that you should, like, Black people should only have Black therapists. I think a good therapist, and this is what I tell my students, a good therapist will make an effort to learn and respect your culture, right? Even if they don't understand it. Because even as a Nigerian, you still may have a different experience than another Nigerian, right? So, and you don't want to be in that space and then the Nigerian therapist is telling you what you should be thinking. You're like, no, that's not what I was going, you know what I mean? And then it ends up being a clash, right? So, so I think that, like I'm saying, it's a personal thing too. Think about what's very important to you. And if you find a good therapist, Nigerian, African-American, Caribbean, whatever, will be able to connect to you and will be willing to listen and let you teach them about the culture.
Awesome. Got it.
And then the other thing also, like Dr. Opara said, that you can search depending on what your needs are. So as I stated, so if you have an individual who is looking for someone who specializes in trauma, for example, with Psychology Today, there are different bullet points that you can look for, you can look through. Like if I'm dealing with anxiety and I'm looking for someone who that's their focus, I would look for that in that description as well. And you can do your own research. You can Google, you can go on the website. But I think, it's also personal at the end of the day. Like Ijoma said, Dr. Ijoma said that some people are not comfortable with talking to another Nigerian therapist because of that stigma sometimes, but I think what distinguishes a good therapist from any other clinician is, like I said, the ability to be neutral, and having the clinical skills to really navigate whatever experiences an individual is presented with, whatever background, and also being able as a clinician to say, this is not my strong point. Educate me, right? Educate me so that I can help you navigate these experiences as well. So, so there's so many things to look for, but I don't think that, there's a label on one particular type of therapist that fits all individuals. It's really just a trial and error also.
I would just like to add other resources. There's also goodtherapy.org. which is similar to Psychology Today as well. There is Christian Directory. Some people like to search for someone that is of a certain faith. Even on Psychology Today, you can search through that as well. You can always start with your health insurance website, where you have a list of clinicians who are already in network. You can search through Psychology Today and group therapy via zip code, so somebody that is close to you, via the insurance that you have, so that you're not calling different people and then hearing them say like they don't accept your insurance. And also, depending on where you are, I know that Dr. Remy and Dr. Ijeoma, they work as faculty. If you are a student that is in a university setting, they usually, I know that for here at OSU, where I used to work until about a month or so ago, they would offer certain amount of sessions for free for those students. And they also have their own directory where those students can go to search for a clinician. So those are just the other types of avenues to look to find therapists.
Also, you can check I know a lot of the time, sometimes employers will have like a employee package where you can tap into network of therapists that are available. So that's another thing. Sometimes you just have to ask to be able to get the resources.
And it's free.
And a lot of therapists have like 15 minutes, 10. I know that like my practice, we offer consultation. So those are ways of feeling out, the therapist is, a lot of them do these consultations where you can talk to them on the phone briefly, get a feel for them, see if you connect with them before you schedule an appointment.
Okay, so guys, so Remy, do you also do that as well? Do you do therapy sessions with people?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so guys, we literally have, out of the 4, Vanessa, I know you do, you're not a licensed.
No.
Yeah, so
I am not.
4 ladies, the 3 of them are actually therapists, right? Ms. Olawale, I know you do, I think you also do counseling and everything. So guys, we're starting from here right now. So we actually have in-house resources here, and don't worry, no one's gonna go talk about you on WhatsApp, on their groups, or any of that stuff.
And I think that's a concern for Nigerians too.
It is.
That we're all connected somehow. So like, so you may know my auntie who I'm talking about, and stuff. And as a therapist, of course, you're trained to keep that confidential.
Yeah.
However, you just don't know, so that in itself, that trust is already, is already broken. Another thing I wanted to add to about therapy is that for those of us that can afford it, I know not everybody can afford this. I think that if you do find a therapist you connect with and they're not in network or whatever it is, you're willing to pay out of pocket, right? I think if you can afford it, we have to look at therapy as an investment, right? So, talk to your therapist about, okay, this is what I could afford per hour, per month, or whatever, and see if they can, whether it's $300 a month or, or however it is. We have to change our mindset, right? Because we can spend that money on a brand new wig or brand new shoes or something, right? But let's also normalize spending money on therapy, because that is going to be an investment for your mental health and physical health for the, down the line, right? There's a lot of benefits. And I know even for me as a therapist, I have to change my perspective in regards to learning how to be able to financially invest. And I mean, luckily my therapist is a network, but I was at the point where I'm like, if my insurance gets cut off, I'm going to pay out of pocket because I love her that much, So I think we need to,
invest. Yeah, so that's one thing.
Talk to your therapist, like Dr. Power said. Sometimes they'll offer a sliding scale, so they're not charging the full price. They may offer 3 sessions. So oftentimes clinicians are willing to work. With our clients, so it's okay to ask.
Yep,
it's okay to ask.
Yep, I agree. Totally agree. So I want to wrap this up because we literally are just about an hour and 35 minutes in since we started. You see how these conversations can easily be 2 hours, guys? I really am trying to keep this conversation short. Like when people come back and they're like, 2 hours, what did you guys talk about? See how we literally could go on. And I literally feel like I didn't even go through all of my points. And there are more things people are commenting on the comment section that we haven't even talked about.
Part 2.
Exactly. So there's just so much, there's so much depth to, mental health. It's not something we talk about a lot. So people have questions, people have concerns. But we have to call it a day, guys. So takeaways, I put some pointers in the comment section. I think some of the takeaways from today would be that we need to be open to receive help. We need to be able to ask for help. We need to be able to invest in getting for help. We've also outlined ways that you can get resources. You know, go to psychologist.com, psychologisttoday.com, go to goodtherapy.org, your employee assistance program.
Psychology Today.
Yeah. Okay. So, and be willing to invest in yourself if the person that you prefer, the therapist you prefer, is not in your insurance plans network. Be willing to not pay for Asoebi. The good thing, guys, is we've not had to pay for Asoebi for the last 4 or 5 months. And we will not be paying for the rest of the year. So that they assured the $250 you were going to use for that lace and that gilly. Guess what? It will pay for something. Okay. It will pay for something. Repurpose that money for the Asoebi into making sure that you are sound and you are well, so that you don't go to that dance floor and start dancing like a crazy person. You would have, people would wonder like, what's wrong with this one? You would have used the money to get some help. Someone said in the comment section, ask the anxiety question. Girl, she says, I'm making Saro jollof and blended pepper, so she doesn't want to call in. So I should ask you guys, what is the anxiety question? That's why I asked you guys to call in. Buki, what is the anxiety? I don't know what the anxiety question is. There's so many comments. I think I lost it. Anxiety question, anxiety. Oh yeah, she said anxiety. Can they talk about that? Is it common in our society, or is it a stereotype that is a white only issue? That's the question.
It's actually very common now more than ever. Everybody has some type of anxiety symptoms, but I think it's even heightened within the Black community, but it's just not talked about because we don't know how to recognize it. So anxiety, I don't know if people even know, I don't know if we talk about even how to recognize anxiety, like to know what it is. Anxiety could be multiple things. It could be heart palpitations, it could feel like you're having a heart attack. That, could be called like an anxiety or panic attack. But heart palpitations, just being, easily irritable, also urinating a lot is a form of anxiety, or having bowel movement. Yeah, having increased bowel movement. I think those are the main ones. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything, but those are the main ones to recognize. And what ends up happening is that we end up covering those symptoms with like other things. I think it was Vanessa that mentioned abusing or being addicted to stuff, right? So if you're having those heart palpitations, or you're feeling like, this like weird jittery feeling too. A lot of times we may be like, okay, let me go get a glass of wine, right? We drink that glass of wine, it calms us down and stuff, but that anxiety is still there. It's not going anywhere. It's just being masked right now. And what ends up happening is that you end up using it more and more. Other people may use weed, other people may use food, other people may use heroin. There's so many different, ways that people are trained to for sex or anything to cover their anxiety, but it's always going to be there until you deal with it, right? So those are, and I think almost all of us have had some type of symptoms of anxiety without realizing it, even as children. Unfortunately, we don't seek help until it's like taking over our lives.
Right. And it can manifest, I think we said this earlier, into somatic symptoms.
Yeah.
So I think we talked about this earlier, you may be having, heart palpitations, abdominal pain, and you're just thinking, well, I'm not feeling too well. Let me call my health practitioner and talk to them about that. And it really could be as a result of the anxiety.
Absolutely.
Think of if you're giving a presentation to a new group or a large group and you're sweaty and you can't focus, those are symptoms.
Yeah.
Of in anticipation of that presentation. So it's the same way with whether it's anxiety of what's going on with the pandemic, work, family, the unexpected, it could come off as physical manifestations.
And another thing to add in addition, sorry, I was just gonna add 2 things that I know sometimes, the first thing is to call your, practitioner, your therapist, but also practicing grounding techniques, being able to identify things that you can hear, things that you can smell, things that you can see, making sure that you kind of come down to what's kind of in front of you rather than what may be going on in your head. And then also practicing self-affirmations, I think, is really helpful as well in regards to anxiety.
What is the name of the technique? I didn't catch that.
Grounding techniques. Grounding. So yeah.
And you can
I'm sure they can explain. Yeah, I'm not a therapist or a psychotherapist, so I think they can explain better. But I think those 2 are very good ways to combat it, just without calling people.
Yes,
you're right.
Oh,
There's something you can Google and see what works for you. Grounding techniques doesn't have to be something where you have to go and pay for something or you have to leave. You can ground yourself in the midst of a crisis. Okay. One technique could be even just what we call doing a body scan. And you can look this up on the internet, doing a body scan of your own body. Like I said, sometimes, we may feel tension in our shoulders, we have abdominal pain, but we're not aware that we're having it unless we pay attention to it. So when you're doing a body scan, just kind of quickly go through it, you start from your head down to your toes, right? You're working on your breathing and you're paying attention to the smallest thing as your forehead, your eyebrows, your eyes. Does it feel tight? Your breathing, so you just kind of go down throughout your body. You notice your neck. How does your neck feel? Your shoulders, does it feel heavy? Does it feel tight? Oftentimes we carry stress on our shoulders, so just being aware of that. You move down to your back, your hips, your knees, down to literally your toes. As you're scanning, your body, you're aware of just areas where you feel stress, right? So if I do a quick body scan and in the midst of an anxiety and I realize that I'm having tension in my shoulders, I can tailor what I'm going to do in that moment to focus on relieving that tension in my shoulders, even in the midst of anxiety, right? When I relieve the the tension in my shoulders, I feel better. Doesn't mean that the trauma is gone, but I feel better. So, there's so much to it, but grounding techniques online, you can Google that. There's so many.
I
But
have
it's a good
on my
tool.
shoulder.
Sure. Can I just add one more symptom here in terms of anxiety is thoughts of worry and ruminations are huge in anxiety, where some people say, I'm just a worrier. I'm just a worrier. And you can't get those thoughts. Once you start, it becomes a spiral. Many of us
diagnosed. Right here. No wonder
Yes.
one of my shoulders are tense. See? Now I know
Yes.
symptoms.
Yes.
I think
And so
it's actually more for me than anybody else.
You play all the worst case scenarios of everything in your mind, and then it may then affect your ability to focus on other things that you need to get done, which then zaps your energy, which then can lead to you not being able to sleep. So it's a confluence of all of those things that come together that paints a picture of anxiety, and it's on a continuum, right? It can just be worry, right, to what we call generalized anxiety disorder. Anxiety by itself is not a bad thing. It's a human thing. It's something that we have. It's an evolutionary thing, right? I often describe to my clients, anxiety is like having a smoke alarm in the house. You don't want to not have a smoke alarm in the house. You want it to go off so that it can protect you. However, when the smoke alarm goes off, you don't just jump out of your bed and go, we're all going to die. Let's get out of this house, right? You want to go and check to make sure, oh, maybe somebody's making bacon. Maybe somebody's, making hot dogs. And then when you check, then you come back, you're like, oh, everything is okay, let's open the door, right? So those are the techniques, like the mindfulness techniques that Vanessa was talking about. Those things are ways that you go and you look and you find out, oh no, I think everything is okay. Or no, we're all gonna die, we need to get out of this house. So anxiety is not something you wanna get rid of, it's something you wanna learn to manage. And oftentimes it doesn't go away because you don't want it to go away. And I also encourage even clients to think about the positive aspects of anxiety. Anxiety is why many of us are successful. Anxiety is why many of us are planners. If we're traveling anywhere, especially internationally, I start 3 weeks with my whole list. And if we go by my list, we don't miss a thing. My husband is like, oh, let's go. And we have to plan within 2 days. We always miss something. So my own way is the best way. You know what I'm saying? So anxiety allows you to, I often tell my clients, let's talk about the things that anxiety has done for you. That's good for you, right? So you don't always say, oh, I'm just an anxious mess, right? So that's just the things that I wanted to add it to.
So let's take the last question from the comments.
And we have to plan within 2 days.
Oh, somebody called in. Yay. All right. So, hi. Let's take a caller. Can you tell us your name, please, and just talk to us?
Good afternoon. My name is Bukola Edmondson.
Hey, Bukola.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you to all the ladies. It's just so good to see our own actually in this industry. So kudos to you all. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate this. I think what I was going to bring up was to differentiate between therapists and psychiatrists. Are they the same? I mean, I think that may be what the issue may be. People thinking, oh my goodness, if I go see someone, it may mean that maybe there's something wrong with me. Psychiatrists are seen as extreme. So that may be the issue. Like, just not to, like you're about to say, are you crazy up there? Is that why you're going to see a psychiatrist? And maybe that's why people don't want to go see therapists or think they may need one. Because I think once my son, I was driving once and he just saw the word therapy. He said, I think I need therapy. And I think when he said that, I just said, I reject it. It's all those children around because it's in a predominant white school. That's why. What's therapy? We don't have therapy. There's nothing wrong with you. But I was saying, what do you need therapy for? He said, when I'm in class and they're talking about a certain topic, I don't like talking about it. So maybe I need therapy for that. And my sister bothers me sometimes. So I try to dismiss that, because he's a child. But when I went to the roots of it and I spoke to certain teachers, he did have some level of anxiety, but I didn't deal with it using the therapy way. I used it the Nigerian mother way and using a teacher to just speak to him and just coach him through that. Because my fear was I don't want certain types of therapists projecting things on him. Because that was my fear. Like, okay, they may say, are you having this? Are you having this feelings? Or it's starting to make him feel like he's thinking a certain way. And then he comes home and then we're trying to deal with something that was never there in the first place. I think that's what the trepidation is. Because some of his friends' moms are like, oh, my son's on anxiety. I'm looking at it, I'm like, what anxiety? Oh, he has anxiety, he has anxiety, he has anxiety. I'm like, so I don't want to downplay them, but it's like as if it's very common now in society now with the kids. Now, you don't want to make it feel like as if you're looking down on their child or you're not appreciating. So maybe to our Nigerian families, identifying between what a therapist is and a psychiatrist and what they actually are they the same? The difference, when does a child need to see a therapist if needed? What type of therapist? Because I do have that trepidation and fear that if you're African, non-African, you're going to try to, poison my child's mind and make him start thinking things he shouldn't be thinking because it's so common now. I work with teenagers and like all of them are on medication and it really does scare me and bother me. But so just to wrap up, just to speak on that difference in therapists and psychiatrists, I think that's where I see therapists as psychiatrists. I just started getting educated myself. Yes, I know I'm educated. I always just thought therapists as psychiatrists. But that differentiation and just letting moms know how it's okay for them to actually seek help with their children if they do they feel like they need help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all look so beautiful. Thank you, ladies.
Differentiate between a therapist and a psychiatrist.
I could probably just, answer that. And I just want to just comment on your child's ability to recognize that he needs therapy. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And kudos to you as a mother, even though you may not have understood it. I think that it's something that he was able to recognize that he wants to talk about his feelings and what's happening around him. I think that's beautiful. And I think if more children had access to therapy, the world would be a much better place, honestly. So I think that in itself is beautiful. I do want to so the quick difference is a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. So they're trained as a medical doctor. They do residency in psychiatry, and they're more likely to focus on children and adults who have serious mental illness. They're able to prescribe medication. They do some type of therapy, which is like talk therapy and so forth, but their main role is to manage your symptoms that are, that need to be controlled by medication and so forth. So that's separate. Psychologists are also doctors, but they're trained, they either have PhDs in psychology or they have doctorates in psychology. They don't prescribe medication. Nobody prescribes medication except a psychiatrist. But a psychologist is able to do talk therapy as well. They're able to do interventions with the child or adult that may deal with like cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT, other types of mental health interventions. A social worker, for example, like a social worker and then a professional counselor, we're seen as therapists or counselors, and we have, typically you need a master's degree, and in addition, you need a license. And some of us are able to diagnose, not all, depending on your level of education and how many years you've been practicing and so forth. But a majority of us are just trained to counsel, do talk therapy with individuals. And also we're trained to do certain interventions, which is just type of like structured programs to that address certain, mental health needs. There are social workers like myself who have doctorates, but I have a doctorate that focuses on family science and is more research-based too. So, and there are professional counselors who do like their master's in counseling or a master's in master's in counseling or mental health counseling and so forth. But we're all able to practice therapy, if that makes sense. But we don't prescribe medication. If we're working with the client and we suspect that they may need, in addition to therapy, medication, we refer them to a psychiatrist, and we try to work together with the psychiatrist to provide both services. I don't know if I missed anything, but.
Yeah, and I think the key when you're looking for a therapist, whether it's for yourself or a child, you want to look for someone who is licensed, who is trained to, either diagnose and to also treat. You can see a counselor within your church or in your community, but it also helps when you have someone who is licensed, because we're looking from a different lens, when it comes to mental health conditions and treatments as well. So it does work to your benefit to look for someone who's licensed.
Awesome, great. So
Oh.
guys, I think we literally should
Sorry.
end this right now. Like, we're really approaching 2 hours. Okay, so no more comments, no more calling. So I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. You
Oh.
are phenomenal
Great.
women. I'm so
Thank
glad,
you.
so intrigued. I've learned a whole lot. I really was in class this whole time. I have learned a whole lot, and more than just myself, I want to believe that everybody looking at what people are saying on the comment section, I strongly believe that we have made significant impact. And a lot of people who are watching this, you will pass this messages on and share this as well to family and friends so that everybody can learn better. A lot of things and the way our lives are structured and the way we kind of grow as people, starts from your mental okayness, if that's even a word. So if things are not okay up here, it kind of manifests down the rest of your life. So it's a very crucial matter. And I'm so glad that you guys took the time to come sit with us for literally 2 hours right now when you could be frying akara or making more money. I'm so grateful, so thankful for all of you guys. They are all on Instagram. I posted the Instagram handles on the comment section. I think, Remy, I'm not sure if I have your Instagram. I think you're the only one that I'm missing, your Instagram handle. Are you on Instagram, Remy?
I am on Instagram.
You are?
Yes.
Okay. What is your Instagram handle? Let me add that.
Rem, just Remzy me. And I'm also on Psychology Today. So if you put my last name, you pull me up.
Okay. Okay. So guys, they're all in Psychology Today. So please, let's take all of the things that we've learned from this. Let's make an impact. Let's go, sign up for a therapy session. My mom is on the comment section. Mommy reminded a family therapist, but okay.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
There's
wrong
nothing
with
wrong with
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Normalize.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to say. Like, this is normal. These are things that we should do, So we shouldn't just be watching this in shows and, TV shows where we watch them go for therapy. This should be a normal. This should be a new norm amongst our communities. And I encourage that greatly. So thank you, ladies, so much. I wish you guys all the
Thank
best.
you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. This
for
is
opening up the
great.
platform.
Yeah, that was awesome. And thank you guys for tuning in. God bless you. Thank you, guys. We love you. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next week. Next week, we're going to be here same time. I know, yes. We'll be here same time, and we are going to be talking to law enforcement officers about what we've been going through, the racial tension. Yeah, we're going to be speaking to them like, come on, tell us what you people are doing. What have you people been doing? We want to know. So we are going to be speaking to them next week as well. And then I think the week after that, I said I wanted to, this was supposed to be a 2-episode thing, but it keeps growing. I heard some college students want to come on the show as well and also give their own, have a voice and say, talk to us about how they're feeling and their experiences in college as Black students. So we're going to do a session with them as well after the police officer. So there's so much, I feel like this is such a great outlet. Everybody has so much to say, so much going on in their mind, so much that they're dealing with. And I'm just so thankful that you guys are on this journey with me. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful week ahead. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lady. Thank you.